we can say a few words here. Hello, Janusz.
Hello, Marcin.
Hello, Piotr.
Hello, guys.
And hello, Michał.
Hey, guys.
Maybe a few words about us. We are the members of this gremium for already from the very beginning. It's always a pleasure to work with all the submissions. So many thanks for everyone who submits their proposals to the call for papers. We encourage every one of you to do this. This is really not harmful. We are very pleasant guys, and we are very happy to review all of them. It's very insightful also for us. So many thanks. For today, we have chosen one of the topics that's extremely frequent in the submissions, and we thought that it will be good to talk it a little bit more over, which is basically about security. Is this going to be the main hype for 2022, and how to deal with that? It's not an easy topic for sure. So the first question for today to you guys is, have you been hacked recently? Janusz.
I haven't been hacked. But yeah, I've been struggling with security. I think everyone has. So who hasn't been struggling with security lately? Like we all remember in December we had this Log4Shell vulnerability. So I think everyone was affected with this. Piotr, I guess you were as well, and Michał.
Yes, that's true. So actually, it's not about being hacked, but actually being able to react upfront before being hacked on the such massive threat that was called out by Janusz earlier. So perhaps actually we were, but obviously for the company rules, actually we are not able to disclose it, and we are not happy to disclose any situation like that. But the key point for DevOps engineers and actually the whole industry is actually to provide security controls and security checks and make sure that the environment is protected by multi-layer defense and have a damage control in place. So therefore, even if companies get hacked or the application gets hacked, actually that's minimized and the issue is fixed immediately. So sometimes it's not possible actually to avoid being hacked, but for some reason, but damage control and have a repeatable process, automated process for recovery is essential. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I think I will add something to this one as well, because in a DevOps days, in a DevOps world, I think that we have this ability to fix those gaps quite fast, right? So this is a good point of being like to work in DevOps manner. So you can, in any case, in any problem, any new zero-day threat, you are a bit faster than everyone else to fix that problems, right? And to act, as you said, act quickly and immediately after the threat was known and some fixes were in place, right?
So implicitly, you answered my next question, which is, can DevOps help here? What can DevOps do for the organizations? Would you like to add something to that, Janusz?
Maybe I will reply to what Michał said, because I think it's not only about how your philosophy of DevOps works, but also you are always dependent with some external things that happen outside of your organization. I will stick to the Log4Shell for now, because it showed us that you are dependent on something external. You are dependent on the library that you are using, and you don't have to necessarily use it directly. It doesn't necessarily needs to be in your own application or in your ecosystem directly. It may be used by some other application or some other tools that are using, let's say, Elasticsearch, which is using the log4j. So you are now in a trouble, because even if it's not your technological stack to use Java directly, you are still affected. So the issue here I see with the DevOps loops and how we automate stuff is that even if you have fast loop and even if it's tight, you have still to look around and deep into the things that you are using. And it's not always a matter of how fast you go, but it's a matter of how fast others will provide a patch for you, a fix for you. And this is sometimes an issue, because we've been waiting for the first patch with log4j, sorry, and then for the second, and here we go again, right? So this was one of the issues. And the other thing that I see in here is that if your DevOps loop is too tight and too fast, it may be also an issue to provide some feedback and information for that, especially for the product teams and from the product teams to have like time to react, because they are in the process of doing something. So you have to have this process of reacting to the security issues directly, like all hands on deck, and we stop the machine and we think about this security now. That's what I can say.
So speaking of Log4Shell, can we still trust open source? That's the problem, right? So, Michał, what do you think?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think some time ago I was looking for some articles or some documents about if the open source is more secure than closed source, and in fact, the results were saying that, okay, open source is much more secure, but on the other hand, there were totally opposite articles about that open source is less secure, because there are a few factors over there. I mean, what I can say is that in open source, we have a community over there. If the open source project is huge, then there is probably a huge community over there. So a lot of eyes can look into the code and see for those security threats, some gaps and so on. But on the other hand, there is no one actually responsible, or the responsibility is vague in this case, because, you know, there is no company behind that one probably, and it's always like someone has to do something, and it's the case when if there is someone that can fix those gaps or something like that. And of course there is a possibility as well on open source that someone may inject some problematic code or some threat or something like that. But then again, I think the whole process of pull requests and adding to the code, to the open source code, is much more secure nowadays. So those things don't happen usually. So I think that the only case over here is that this, in my opinion, that the responsibility over here is a bit, it's not clear enough for those open source projects. But I think those, in my opinion, still the open source is a bit more secure than closed source. I believe more the community than some company.
So let's counter that. Piotr, you are working for a large international company. What's your opinion here? Do you agree? We know that in a large company you have both a large number of internal tools and libraries, but a large company such as IBM would also contribute to open source extensively. So what's your opinion in here?
Sure, thanks. So, well, my opinion is that actually open source is the best thing that actually ever happened in the IT industry. So, and it has strong points and weak points as anything in our life. But in general, you know, I don't believe that issues that were so widely spread, shall start us thinking that actually open source is unsecure. No, it's actually not the case. First of all, it's healthy open source projects are secured because the community standing behind it is very responsible when it comes to the addressing security vulnerabilities. However, when you are using open source, you need to have a few things in your mind. First of all, understand what type of open source you're using, how healthy your dependencies are in terms of them being maintained and still supported by the community, and enumerate all of your dependencies and all of the dependencies of dependencies and so on and so forth. But last but not least, delivering solutions and products to the customers or services to the customers. Actually, customers do not care whether we use open source under the hood or not. It is our responsibility to find a mitigation, fix, or workaround to any security threat in open source. So it's at a certain point of time, actually you're taking control and you're contributing, perhaps initially on the private fork, to the changes to the open source, and then eventually contribute to the wider community, because large companies providing services and products, they are on the hook to provide a security, to provide secure solution at the end of the day. So I would say that actually using open source is making our lives easier, because actually it is easier to find solution to the security problems rather than to use the third-party proprietary software or dependencies. So I would say that actually using open source is more secure.
Great to hear that.
I would add maybe something to that.
Please do.
Because as far as I am really into the open source software and libraries, I think we have the issue that as IT is growing and we have more and more developers and people around IT, we also have this issue of let's say community standards that we have with providing tools. Because right now, I think most of the developers are looking at the open source library, and they are looking at the stars or how many people are using it, right? And this is the only factor that you are using to decide whether to use or not the library, let's say. And the issue here is that there are some good libraries which are well maintained, but there are some that are maintained by one person. Not far like in the past, we had this issue with even GPG, which had an issue with being maintained because only one person was maintaining it and decided not to do so any longer. And this was one of the issues. And I think there are lots of tools like that. We have libraries for JavaScript, which are like very small, simple libraries maintained by one person as well. And they are used by everyone on the internet. Even if you think you don't use it, you are using it because some other tools are using it. And let's see that the vector of the attack goes to that one person, and these libraries are hijacked somehow. Suddenly, the whole internet can be destroyed for a few minutes. I know that there was also in the DevOps world there was an issue with Chef some time ago, because one of the because Chef as a company was going to support one of the USA governmental it's called ICE, federal forces, and I remember that Seth Vargo, which was one of the guests on one of our conferences, decided to pull off with the library, which was broadly used by people using Chef. So as a result, suddenly everyone wasn't able to use this library because it was taken down. So, okay, Chef decided to make a fork and use this fork, but now the company has to maintain this fork. And this is the issue, I think, that if there are no companies behind some open source solutions, it will be really hard to maintain it for a long time. And our resources as developers, as sysadministrators, and everyone who's working on open source are limited. I cannot maintain tons of libraries and do this pretty well.
Exactly, but we also have communities such as CNCF or others. There are really many of them spawning right now, which is also extremely helpful here, I guess, because there is not only one company behind that. There can be multiple ones, and they are agreeing on what to do, right? So I think that's very helpful, and it gives another layer of trust to the open source. Right, so next question we have is, let's take a more closer look at what we do in our companies. And we know that life is not easy here. So we've got Log4Shell, we've got all the other vulnerabilities that are coming into our lives, and our management trying to squeeze more and more tools that will catch this early or catch this reliably. And from a DevOps perspective, what's your opinion, what's your experience on that? How painful is it to squeeze all of those checks into your pipelines? What do you think, Michał?
From my perspective, the secure, let's say, platform or secure system, it's there are multiple layers of the security over there, right? So we can focus on some scans or some additional I don't know, secure tools adding to our pipelines and so on. But on the other, but we have to take in mind that there are a lot more factors that can happen. And I think that what about the security, I've on the Kubernetes documentation, there's a nice concept of the 4C security. Like there is 4 different layers in a cloud native applications. Like you have a security for cloud, for cluster, for your container, and for the code. So there are 4 different layers of the security, and where you can configure some security things. And yeah, adding those additional tools for some layer, let's say for some cluster or for containers, I think it's not a problem. You have to do it one by one, but yeah, you need to be an expert there, or you need to have some additional knowledge, skills to make sure that you configure those tools properly. And yeah, probably I think that the dedicated person or dedicated team, like I think in every company there is some security team that provides some security measures, provides some security standards that you have to follow. That's a good point, and that's a first point is to start with. And yeah, all those standards that can define your firewall rules or some higher level behavior of your applications or any network traffic inside of your company and inside of your let's say company network, and what should go outside or what can go inside and so on. And yeah, I think again with DevOps approach, adding some additional tools to scan something or to search for some additional threats is it's much easier done in some let's say all legacy systems or something like that, because usually there are a lot of those tools. You have to pick correct one and then configure it properly. Yeah, on the other hand, as I said, you need some knowledge about those tools, and then that's probably the biggest challenge here, to get familiar with those tools and know how to configure them. And yeah, I think that's the major problem here. There are plenty of them, and probably you are not aware of which one is the best choice, right?
Yeah, that's the case. Janusz, do you have pipelines that run for less than 2 hours in your company?
Yeah, actually I do, because it all depends on the sizes of the projects that you have. Because my opinion on that is that it all depends on the size of the code base of the tools you are using, dependencies you are using. It all depends on the size of the clusters you are using, and so on and so on. I think one of the things that we have to touch here is that we are monitoring our applications, but there's also the matter of observability and how we observe our whole system and how it behaves. Because when there are issues with security, we have to detect them quickly, and we have to see them before anything happens, before even it touches our application. And there are different tools, different methods, different standards, and so on for that. And I think it's usually a matter of using proper tool to the size of the project we are using. There is always something we are not covering. We have to like understand that we will never be 100% secure. It will never happen. There is always something that will happen, and it will be beyond our possibilities of detecting it upfront. And I believe that this is the moment when we go into thinking about the processes we have and how we react to the things that happen. Because using tools, it's cool. Usually big companies have their own tools. We also do have tools like that tell us some information, give us alerts. They inform us about some vulnerabilities that were detected in some libraries. We are constantly checking our instances towards whether we have some issues with some old libraries and stuff like that. So we are constantly checking this, and I think in big companies it may be easier because we can dedicate some people to do this. We may have whole teams to do this. The issue is with the smaller projects or small companies which want to be fast, they want to deliver fast, they want to be, we would say, they want to do the DevOps and be sexy, but at some point they may not have resources to catch everything with security related to this. And I think this is where some open source tools come, where organizations like OWASP come in and their good practices, because this is something that we can all implement at any level. And there are tools that we can use for that, but I think it's limited to the resources we have. By the way, if you, our viewers, like attendees, if you have some comments or some ideas or questions, feel free to ask them in the chat, because we are looking at the chat, and we would like to see you also commenting on this, and we can relate to that.
Yeah, we encourage that, definitely. Right, so we said that it takes quite a lot of time and effort to learn these new technologies. So, Piotr, what's your opinion on that? Is it worth to invest your time in learning that specific tool set, or rather, are there any other things that you can learn, maybe more general in the terms of DevOps and in the terms of security in 2022? What should be on our radar here?
Sure. Well, perhaps my actually answer will not be driven by, let's say, what's the current trend on the market, or 2022 or whatever. But I think being successful and being able to contribute and lead DevOps team, actually, you need to put a little bit of energy actually to gain a baseline knowledge about security in general, security principles. So Janusz mentioned OWASP. Actually, that's a great starting point in terms of trying to understand the top 10 security threats, which can be possible because actually those define the patterns that you run into specific instances in every single vulnerability that you and your team will work through this year and the year after, and I guess in the subsequent years anyway. So first of all, you need to gain the basic understanding what are the typical threats. So therefore, when someone says session hijacking, or when someone says XSS, that there is a XSS vulnerability, you actually understand what it is, and you can actually build in your mind, all right, so that's the specific security threat that my application actually may be super impacted. And So understand what are the types of threats, understand what are the what is the nomenclature and what's the standard way of describing vulnerabilities, where to find details about vulnerabilities, how to assess impact of the vulnerability, what is the CVE score, things like that. So as soon as you actually gain the basic understanding what it is, you'll see that every single vulnerability actually falls into the specific bucket. And over the time, you'll understand that specific categories have different tools to capture those and to manage those. So tools come and go, and market is changing. So perhaps what's the best container security scan in 2022 or 2021 used to be may not be the case by end of this year. But you need to have the basic understanding what are the types of threats, experiment with the tools, and don't be shy to change the tools. Experiment with those. Market is changing, industry is changing, tools are also changing and evolving. So don't stick to one tool or the collection of tools. Experiment and educate yourself more and more continuously.
I hope, Piotr, that this notification from Slack is not about some security issue you have. It's your Slack notification, I guess, or Michał?
Not this time, yes.
Michał, what's your recommendation on the skills?
I think that Piotr gave a lot of good recommendations. I will add something more that Janusz already mentioned as well about that. We should not focus in security. We should not focus only on the let's say some security tools that are dedicated to provide some security, but we have to keep in mind that using the whole observability tooling for the metrics, logging, some tracing, that gives us a lot of information already. And this set of tools configured properly can give us already some information about the threat or about that something wrong happened. And yeah, we can even see that there is some problem, there is some issue with some VMs or some containers before the security threat was published or something like that. And if we can do this, then we are at a great position to I don't know, stop this VM or somehow act right away. And then again, what Janusz mentioned about the process, if we have some properly described process how to act on some threats or some issues that we observe in our platform, then we can go with that process, and then it's much easier and faster for us to properly fix the problem. And so from my perspective, it's getting knowledge on those basics about the security, and in fact to observe the whole platform. From my perspective, observability, it gives you the whole the full picture of your platform, and it can give you the needed information that those security tools can miss.
Best practices, we've got observability. What else?
I would add one thing to that, because I'm doing a lot of recruitment reviews with technical people, and what I see is that some people are more or less aware of the threats that are possible, like Piotr mentioned, those 10 buckets that we can put any issue into. But what I see here is that also in practice, we as a people in IT, we are really lazy over time. It's like we know the practices, we know that we should be secure, we should rotate our keys, we should rotate our passwords, and so on and so on. But over time, we are we can even laugh at some people putting sticky notes on the monitor with the password. But let's be honest, we do the same thing. Even if we are aware of that, we do the same thing. Maybe not exactly the same, but usually it's like we don't use password managers because, I don't know, let's say I never had the time to set up my password manager. Or we are not using even sometimes MFA, so multi-factor authentications. We don't have, we don't do stuff that's regular on the daily basis. And I think it's maybe people from security teams do that. But like regular developers, regular administrators, they don't, it's not like they usually do this because we don't have, maybe we do, maybe we don't, maybe we are not following the processes. And I think the process here maybe a little bit an overkill for us, because if you provide tons of stuff that you have to go and steps you have to go, it will be like, oh my God, I have to do this like every 3 months, let's say, and I have to go through all of this process. It would take me like 3 days. It's insane. I can automate this stuff for sure. But I think over time people get lazy, and we have to, like Piotr said, we have to put energy all the time into teaching people that you have to do this. You have to follow this. You have to remember about this because the consequences may be really, really big for the whole company. Like we mentioned, open source. Using open source is a problem also because there's no one really responsible for the loss that we will have. So it's on you because you are using this library. So you have to keep in mind on what you are using, how you are using it. And I think it's not only to the people like engineers, it's also to the product managers, like the whole management teams, because they are also working with production.
Looks like it's already there, right? We don't have a choice, and we need to embrace that situation where we basically are facing the security-related issues day to day. And I guess the answer to the question stated in our description for this panel is, well, we are already there. Okay. So guys, I guess that's all for our questions today. If you have any questions on your side, we encourage you once more to state your questions on the meeting chat, and we are happy to answer within our green room here.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to discuss on the chat, because there's like over 5,000 of you, of our attendees, and we picked this topic actually because some like we've seen this trend that in the call for papers we had lots of topics covering security, and I think it's a hot topic for this year and so on. And I think it's important for you also to learn some new things. So learn from each other, maybe discuss some practices that you have. This time we are online, but you still have this chat. There's like 500 of you out there, and you can share your experience, you can share your knowledge, and we'll be happy to join you and discuss with you there, along with the talks that we'll have today and tomorrow.
And there will be a pretty quite large amount of those security-related speeches both today and tomorrow. So I guess we are all looking forward to listening to those and discussing them on our chat.
Yeah, anything to add, Piotr, Michał? Any other notes? I'm looking at the chat right now because I'm looking whether we have something.
I think it is encouraging having a healthy conversation on the platform actually significantly helps, right? So guys, DevOps Days actually is a community event. It's from community to community, right? So it's about having a conversation, knowledge exchange, collaboration, and discussion. So guys, it's not kind of a one-way type of communication that DevOps Days conference is after, but it's all about knowledge sharing. Even though it's fully remote, actually, guys, don't be shy asking your questions. There are no stupid questions. Reach out to the panelists, reach out to the program community members who are also on the chat, and take as much as possible from this conference. So therefore, you're better at your daily job.
Michał, anything to add?
Yeah, I think no. I think that you guys told everything already. So I also encourage to ask questions, and yeah, glad to be here.
Okay, I think we can wrap up.
Yep. So good luck, guys, in your security endeavors, and happy listening to all the prelections today and tomorrow.
And I will be back with you in a few minutes, and we'll start with the first talk of the day. So see you in a few minutes.